position at Discovery vacated by Lance Armstrong, and another American, Floyd Landis, challenged them both if he hadn't been 6 seconds late for his start time thanks to a late wheel change. As a consequence, time the wrong gear still came only 9 seconds down. From his lack of words at the start this morning, what the hotel last night. If he'd been that nippy at the start yesterday, he might be in the yellow jersey instead of a bad mood. As it is, Hushovd leads the race on the same rounded-up time as Hincapie. Alejandro Valverde is the biggest name amongst the group, rounding out the top 6, 4 seconds back. Landis is down in 9th, just behind Hincapie's Discovery teammate Paolo Savaldelli. Tom Bohnen's impressive 12th place makes the Belgian sprinter a threat to take the race lead today. David Miller and Bradley Wiggins started yesterday's prologue a minute apart and turned in almost identical rides. Miller, in his first competitive race of any kind after his 2-year drugs ban, was 17th, 14 seconds off the pace.
I'm just really happy to be here and enjoyed my ride. It just wasn't happening. Can't wait to get racing in a bunch again. I'm really looking forward to that, and you know, I mean, I think I'm going to get better and better as the race goes on. I mean, I've been training for these 3 weeks, so I'm looking forward to the time trials, the road stages, everything.
Bradley Wiggins was making his Tour debut, shaved nearly 0.8 of a second off Miller's time to come in 16th.
After the prologue, we thought we'd catch up with Britain's Olympic champion Bradley Wiggins at the Cofidis team hotel. He's had a hard day, and we wondered if he'd be relaxing and watching the England game.
But first I asked him what he made of his debut Tour appearance.
5-10 minutes before the start, waiting to go on the ramp. And it started to really hit me then what the tour, what the occasion and everything really. But up until then it was pretty relaxed and just as I say, taking it in my stride and going through the routine of warming up and getting ready for the start. But I was a little bit jelly-legged at the start of the first 2K, just really didn't settle into the ride. So yeah, overall it was a good experience.
Did you speak to David before the start?
No, we were sort of avoiding each other really. It was Dave was off just a minute in front of me, and we were both sort of trying not to make eye contact before the start, just in the closed-off area, but just both focused on our own race today, really. And I'm sure we'll get to have a chat tomorrow morning at the start area. So.
Well, I think he did you a favour at the finish because you got absolutely mobbed by the journalists, and you were able to scoot by and straight out of the pen.
Yeah, it's always a bit of a fight after the finish. I always try and avoid that. It's probably the worst time to talk to TV or journalists and things, and you always say things perhaps you regret later on, so I prefer to just keep my mouth shut and wait until we're at the hotel and then have a chat.
So after the stage, what do you do then? Where do you go after the stage? Back to the hotel?
Yeah, back in the bus and sort of trying to wind down a little bit, straight back to the hotel, straight for the massage, telly on, because England are playing today.
Indeed they were, but as we all know...
Not much relaxation there then.
Right, well, there's a look at Bradley Wiggins' first ever road stage in the Tour de France. Stage 1, a 184-kilometre loop starting and finishing here in Strasbourg. And Chris Bowman is with us. Chris, beautiful racing conditions.
It is absolutely great, certainly with some of the weather we had in the first week last year. I know that all the riders would rather have this light winds and hot weather than the alternative. So I think everybody will be pretty happy today, and they're glad to just get the race underway.
All right, the race has already had its first breakaway. Predictably, there's a handful of Frenchmen in there. Also, Fabian Wegmann, a German for the Gerolsteiner team, hoping to get his face on television as the race crosses into Germany. As we join the action with Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwin, that lead group has a lead of around 2 minutes.
Well, the sun on the right shoulders now, the shadows there. 2 minutes and 7 seconds is the gap. As these riders know they're doomed, it's only a question of when they are picked up. We're looking here at number 159. He still remains the leader of today's stage of the Tour de France on the road. That is Benoit Vaugrenard, and we're coming up now to the second sprint of the day. I think he'd be interested in taking a small 6-second time bonus here. That was the 1 kilometre to go. We're at Plobsheim, leaving us for, once we pass the line, 47 to race to the finish. We'll be shortly in Germany, and we'll stay there till around 4 or 5 kilometres when we'll race back into France.
I think it will be very important for the young man there, Voronard, to actually try and get himself the 6 seconds. He's moved himself up to 13 seconds off the lead. That would take him just that little bit closer, and always the risk and always the hope that he might survive to the finish today and have a good chance at getting the overall lead. That's why guys do this.
Well, Unai Echeverria, the Spanish rider, won't be interested. He's the orange jerseyed rider. Coming through in the black is Nicolas Portal. He might have a little go as he tries to get through, but the two Boy Telecom riders, Walter Benetton, Mathieu Sprick. Watch for the rider in white. He's got a very good position here now to take this. But he doesn't want to go through now because that's a little bit too close to the sprint as he comes through and moves over.
Did you see the way he just looked under his arm there? What he's looking for to see was who was on his wheel. This is a little move. This is the move by Walter Benetton.
Well, Benetton, and there comes the reaction now from Beauregard. He needs this 6 seconds. They could be valuable later. I don't think he's going to get them. This is a flat-out effort here by Benetton, who was second at the previous sprint. A long way to go. 90 kilometres back, in fact. It looks as though Voronard has got second. And third is the other rider on Telecom, which will be Mathieu Sprick.
Well, that was a crafty move. You see, Benetton is a very clever bike rider, Phil. He's been around for a number of years, and he knew exactly how to catch everybody by surprise there. Voronard almost smiling at that. He got caught out, and he knows it.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was a good sprint, you know, Paul. As we see here, the gap is closing. In fact, the attack that was made there by Benetton was incredible, and he went so quickly, it really left no chance. Because Voronard was blocked in, he had to get round the other riders, and he had no chance then because the bird had flown the coop by then, and Benetton got revenge from the earlier sprint, amazingly, 90 kilometres ago.
Well, I tell you what, very often I talk about a tough bike rider, but Benetton on that occasion was a very clever bike rider.
Yeah, and you need to be clever because sometimes everybody's legs are tired, and the brain gets you out of trouble.
Well, it's actually a pretty nice day in the saddle for Voronard because that gives him a 10-second total time bonus gained this afternoon, and that's going to put him right up alongside Floyd Landis in the overall classification if the race catches this leading group of 7 riders and Voronard obviously finishes in the same time as the main field at the end.
And that's very important, especially if you are a French rider and you're in your first Tour de France as well. Mum and Dad get on the telephone and say, you're doing great, son. You're 9th in your first Tour de France. That's incredible. Well, we're now in Plobsheim. This is the town which will lead us now into Germany. 46 kilometres still to race. The peloton, they're already at the 1 kilometre part of the sprint here, so they're not that far behind now.
They're still pretty much stretched out in a long arrowhead at the front end of the main field. We're in that moment. This is a sort of a lull before the storm here. These riders will start to really pick it up as we get closer to the finish line in Strasbourg, and then there will be an awful lot of risks happening as riders try to place themselves and make sure they don't use too much energy in the last 15 or 20 kilometres.
Well, the sprint is, as we saw it, confirmed on our computers from the race organisations. Benetton, Voronard and Sprick in that order, which means they get 6 points, 4 points and 2 points for the green jersey competition, and you get 6 seconds, 4 seconds and 2 seconds in the overall race for the yellow jersey competition.
Hi, I'm Bradley Wiggins and you're watching the Tour de France on ITV.
Welcome back to our coverage today of the first full day of racing in the Tour de France here on ITV4. This is where you'll find us now for the next 3 weeks of racing, same time, same place. And this is our engine room for those next 3 weeks. This is our commentary position. We'll be at the finishing line of every stage. Now, we would like to hear from you. Any questions you've got about the Tour de France or indeed about cycling in general, there's our email address. We'll do our best to answer them.
And don't forget, our competition starts tomorrow. First prize is a trip to Paris for the final weekend of the Tour de France. That's certainly a prize worth winning.
Absolutely. Well, let's get back to today's highlights. Here we go. We're crossing over the bridge here, which links France with Germany. We're leaving France. We're entering Germany. And in the next 35 kilometres or so, we'll be back into France for the dash to the line. The leading breakaway of 7, a lead of just over 2 minutes. And there is the bridge, and below us is the peloton.
Not very much, is it? Around about 1 kilometre, 1.5 kilometres distance between the leading group of 7 riders and the main field, who are moving along slowly and steadily closer to that leading group of 7 riders. They are waiting, I think, Phil, to pounce. They know they've got this race under control. They know they're inside of 2 minutes now. What they will try and do, I think, is time the catch to perfection, because they realise if they catch them too early, there's going to be an awful lot of attacks on this first day on the open road.
Well, that's a beautiful picture, I have to say. And it's now the peloton who's crossing this magnificent river that goes right down the Rhone Valley and splits France with Germany.
Well, the amazing thing here that I didn't know until a couple of days ago, this is the Rhine. This is the Rhine. This moves up towards the north. And in 1868, this was classified as an international waterway. And from the last bridge over the river in Bâle, it actually gives Switzerland free access to the sea in the north.
These were all strategic points in the wars, of course, and the Rhine there, one of the great rivers of Europe. And the riders, well, they just keep on pedaling. They don't even take in any of these beautiful views, but I know that many people watch the Tour de France on television because they love the views and the countryside, and they know the riders find the best roads, and days after they finish, they go on holiday on the same roads.
Well, I think we're getting to a situation now where it's a little bit like suspended animation. We're waiting for the teams of the sprinters to start. These guys are waiting to get caught. I think as seasoned professionals, most of them realize that they will get caught now. They put in a lot of effort this afternoon, and the time gap is slowly crumbling to inside the 2-minute mark. There is the border, the indication these riders now have moved into the German territories. And the main field there are now slowly but surely starting to wind up the pressure at the front end. Magnificent view, and I'm sure we'll see a lot of people turning out, because today the Germans will have to support a different name, and I think they will be out today to support a man by the name of Eric Zabel, who for me has been at the top of this sport, Phil, for an awful long time.
And he was supposed to come in here, Paul, as a domestique for Pataki, and here he is, the manager. And watch out, there's the world champion, Tom Bowman. How many wins?
196.
Oh, I thought he was over 160.
Not far off 200.
That's
not far off 200.
He's got to get 200 before he retires, because that is a superb total. Most people don't win 10 riders as professionals, believe it or not. This man's won 196.
This man has won 17 races so far this season. He's only been a professional since 2002, and he's already won himself 63 races. But probably last year was a magical year for Tom Bowman, the world champion there. And it's been a long time, Phil, since we've seen a successful world champion like Tom Bowman.
You go back to 1980, in fact, for a world champion in his year of reign has won more races, and that was Bernard Hinault. He in fact won 32 races in 1981, including the Tour de France. But I think, to put it in perspective, a lot of Bernard Hinault's rides were those little town centre circuit races, which the races aren't fixed, but the rides are told to allow certain riders to win.
I would say
really count,
we could call them exhibition races. Well, looking down at the main field there, you can see that they're stretched out into a very long line. 1 minute and 48 seconds is the advantage now at 37 kilometres to go.
And there's our yellow flag again. More danger.
Polizei, a different kind of police now at the side of the road. The German police coming out to look after the Tour de France, the leading group of 7 riders. I feel absolutely certain in the next 10 kilometres or so will be pulled back into the fold, and the friendship of the main field, which they haven't had since the 3rd kilometre of racing, although a couple of riders actually managed to catch up. Sprick caught up there at 20 kilometres into the race, but since then they built themselves up a maximum lead of 5 minutes, and now it's inside of 2 minutes as they've crossed across the Rhine and moved into Germany for around about 30 kilometres of racing. So a quick reminder: Fabien Wegman, Nicolas Portal, Unai Echevarria, Stéphane Ogier of Team Cofidis there. Renard is in there for FDJ, that's the rider in the white jersey. Walter Beneteau of Bouygues Telecom, and of course Mathieu Sprick, the taller rider of the Bouygues Telecom teams, have managed to lead this race for around about, so far, 130 kilometres. But the main field now are certainly getting themselves organised. So there is a little bit of entente cordiale for you.
Just seeing that the French police doing the work in Germany, Paul, the German police just watching.
Well, they have to just keep an eye on what the French police are doing on their soil. The French gendarmes moving across the border here with the permission of Germany to look after the riders. The gap coming down dramatically. A minute and a half now, the advantage of those 7 leaders at 21 miles to go. And that's inside of about 35 kilometers of racing. You know, if you look back there, Phil, you can actually just see the shimmering of the heat of the main field. They are certainly now just waiting to pounce. They're waiting to pull these riders back in, and I think they will try and do it at around about the 20-kilometer mark.
Well, these wide open flat roads now look right in the distance. There's outriders already coming, so they're going to be in the sight of the peloton now. You can see them again in the distance as they go around this traffic roundabout here and come together again. This is an angry bunch now. It should be a catch in the next 10 kilometers or so. And that means they'll be all together for the final big sprint, which comes with just 9 kilometers, just over 5 miles before the finish.
Well, they cross the Rhine once again and come back into France, but at that time they will be going absolutely flat out because they'll be just on 5 miles to go to the finish. There will be riders just touching their brakes, hoping to stay at the front end of the main field. That's Vasseur over there on the left-hand side, having a little chat with a rider from De Vitamont Lotto. They're trying to work as a cohesive group, different riders from different teams working together for the same cause. That's to pull back these 7 leaders and give the sprinters a chance to have their big day.
And that's what it will be, Paul, a day for the sprinters, because the men who are looking to win this race in 3 weeks' time in Paris, men like the Americans, Floyd Landis, Levi Leipheimer, George Hincapie, all the Australian, Cadell Evans, or anybody else like Alessandro Valverde, they will just concentrate on staying out of trouble today, because the timing is such that when the whole field finishes together, they all get the same time. It's just the riders on the sharp end over the line first get a handful of seconds time bonus. And the men who are aiming to win the Tour de France aren't interested in a handful of seconds. They are looking for the opportunity to take minutes.
But what you have to do if you're looking at winning the bike race overall is you have to actually ride fairly close to the front, because these finishes are so dangerous. You don't want to get involved in an accident on the run in towards the finish, because you could see your Tour de France get taken away for you. Remember a man by the name of Levi Leipheimer was big favourite for the Tour de France a couple of seasons ago.
Yep.
Crashed on the very first day, fractured his hip, was unable to compete.
Yep.
And for him, that would have been a very serious challenge for him, because that took away almost a whole season out of his career.
And that is what the big riders worry about on these opening days of the Tour de France. And they'll be more nervous in the next couple of days because we go on to much more narrow roads. But the sprinters just lick their lips because these are their stages. And they're not afraid of a rough and tumble, and they'll mix it with the best of them. So watch out for a hectic finish today when we get down to Strasbourg and when we catch the 7 leaders, who I think have done a great job at holding off this field.
Hello, my name is Tor Husov. You're watching Tour de France on ITV.
In the first week of the Tour de France, stage wins are often settled amongst the sprinters. When the peloton hits town with 10k to go, it generally only means one thing, and that's a sprint to the line. At speeds that would set the police radars flashing, riders race elbow to elbow, heads down and flat out. It's a test of power, tactics and bravery, and some riders positively thrive on it. The competition for the green jersey, the Sprinter's Prize, should shape up into a race between the astonishingly powerful Belgian, world champion and model sprinter Tom Bowman and the wily, experienced Aussie Robbie McEwen.
For stage wins and then an eventual green jersey, Tom Bowman is he's a big candidate for both those things. He's my man to beat. I'm his man to beat, I suppose.
The feeling is mutual.
Robbie is probably one of my main rivals in the sprint and probably the fastest sprinter next to me in the Tour. So the first stages are pretty hard, so I still have to wait and see what was going on. But after the third or the fourth stage, we have a flat week, and then it will be me against him.
Superbly powerful and efficient, Bowman is the people and pundits' favourite.
The last few years, always when I started to race, and I said it was an objective, and I won the race, I spoiled the people. And now they think that if I say that's an objective or I want to win this or that, they always think that I already won it.
Sprinting is about timing your effort so that you can produce maximum power in the last few meters. As with everything on the Tour de France, it's about teamwork. Ideally, a lead-out man brings you to the front, then you're on your own. So what goes through the mind of a top sprinter with 200 meters to go?
If I'm at 200 meters to go and I'm only doing 60, I'm thinking, I'm not going fast enough.
Well, it's all shaping up nicely on stage one for the Tour's first bunch sprint. The breakaway group of 7 riders are still hanging on to their lead as we rejoin the race inside the last 20 kilometres. They know they won't hang on to it for long.
I'll tell you what, Phil, there's a lot of riders, their heart rates now will start to be reflecting how difficult the race is starting to get. We get an idea of how tough it is for some of these riders. They can reach a maximum of 185 beats a minute, you know, in a race like this. And if it's not all that difficult, you'll probably see them riding around about the 140 beats a minute mark. And at the moment, I think in the main field, we're cruising along at around about 43 kilometers an hour. That's an indication that they certainly haven't started to turn up the gas, especially on board Team Quickstep, because Matteo Tossato, I think, is the man who's going to line himself up for Tom Bowman in around about 10 kilometers time.
Well, just looking at the wonderful images there coming from our French motorbike cameras there. He's not as close as you think he is, but those lenses took us right inside that breakaway. The urgency on their faces. Wegman, well, he looked pretty happy because even if he is caught, he'll be on the podium tonight to receive the first jersey as leader in the Tour of the King of the Mountains. And the best young rider, that should now be for the man who's been here all day, Benoit Vonrenard. He should be up there as well. But who's going to take the green and who is going to take the yellow? And that will be down to the sprint.
That will be down to the sprint. 20 seconds for the first man to cross the line, 12 seconds for second, 8 seconds for third, and that's going to be a rapid calculation. Thor Hushovd has got all that information in his head. He knows who can beat him of the sprinters, and he'll be keeping a very close eye on that. His team, I think, have done so much work here this afternoon. As you can see, a number of Crédit Agricole riders at the back end of the group. Thor Hushovd is basically going to have to try and sprint on his own. He's going to have to use Tom Boonen's wheel. He's going to have to keep a very close eye on Robbie McEwen. And, of course, he will be keeping a very close eye on Stuart O'Grady, who is only 4 seconds behind him.
And I just thought of another sprinter looking at the leaky gas boys at the back, Magnus Bagstedt, who lives in South Wales with his Welsh wife, Megan, and is, of course, a Swede.
Well, Big Maggie, he's going to be ready for the sprint here this afternoon.
Just looking under the bridge there now, the latest news we're getting is around 24 seconds the gap. We're about 17 kilometres just outside, 10 miles from the finish. There you can see them. The quarry is in sight, the charge is on. It looks like McEwen's boys are now working pretty hard.
There's a little bit of a flurry of an attack going on here. A bit of a surprise here, Phil, because as far as I'm concerned, it's almost over bar the shouting. Somebody just wants to prolong the agony.
They have been in the lead for 166 kilometres. That's almost 100 miles, and there is an attack, and it's gone by Walter Benito. I think we should have predicted that, Paul. This is a rider who has ridden 7 tours. This is his 7th journey round France. He's making a last desperate bid for victory.
Well, a last desperate bid to survive a little bit longer as far as I'm concerned. We're looking at around about 10 miles to go to the finish. If you just look down the road there, you can see hovering in the distance a big dark cloud. Well, that dark cloud is the main field all over the road. They're getting ready to pounce. They won't allow somebody to steal the glory from the sprinters here this afternoon. They will get themselves organised very quickly.
Well, just on 10 English miles to go. It would take a very good cyclist about 21 minutes. A Tour de France rider about 20. He's never going to hold these boys off for 20 minutes.
No, he needs to be able to ride at the moment for around about that distance at something like 50 kilometres an hour, while the main field, Phil, they can turn it up to 55 kilometres an hour quite easily. But look at the way he's throwing all of the last little bits of energy he's got into this, hoping he's going to survive. He's got the gap over the group that he was with. It's Nicolas Portal who is halfway across the gap. And Benito, you know, started the day an awful long way down. I think he's just been joined there by Portal with a gap of around about 15 minutes back to the remnants of that group.
Well, if Benito was to win a stage, will celebrate 34th birthday 3 days after this race reaches Paris. And that would be a great birthday present to remember the days he was 33, that's for sure. But it looks as though we've got 2 groups now. Some are surrendering, others are trying to drive for home, and it's being led by Walter Benito, who's only ever won 3 races in his life. no big names. But, you know, not all professional riders win races. They are in the team to help others win races. They have a very important role to play.
Well, a lot of riders never win a race in their whole career. There was an Italian rider a number of years ago by the name of Roberto Conti. He only won one race in his whole career.
Good win.
But it was a pretty impressive one at the top of the Alpe d'Huez. Well, the remnants of the group are being caught there. 4 of that 7-man group are back in the main field. Walter Benetton is still on his own, and I think halfway across the gap to catching him up, it was the Frenchman Nicolas Portal of the Caisse d'Epargne Lille Baleares team.
Well, look at the face here now. This is the hard part of any Tour de France. You've led for over 168 kilometres, and you are now trying to ride the whole field off your back wheel. Walter Benetton hasn't won a race since he won the Grand Prix Le Telegram in August 2003. It would be very nice to be first to Strasbourg.
Well, it would be very nice to be first to Strasbourg. He may survive a little bit longer. Those are the 2 guys that got halfway across the gap. They are 10 seconds behind Walter Benetton. But looking at the attitude and the position they've got there, Phil, I think they've given up. That's Wegman on the left-hand side, Portal on the right-hand side. They know the main field is on their tail. They're just going to leave now 1 man at the front. Walter Benetton, who I'm not happy to be the bringer of doom to a situation like this, but he's going to get caught.
Well, only 1 remains now. Portal, Wegman, get himself cleaned up, ready for the presentation for the King of the Mountains. Meanwhile, now they're going to have to try and hang on to this field as it starts to get into top gear for the finish. Sprinters don't race for second place, so they want Benetton back in the fold here. Only a win is good enough for the sprinters. The drive is now on. They know 1 man has done what they always fear, tried to beat them to the finish.
Well, when you look at the 1 man who's at the front of the race, Walter Benetton, he can probably ride on his own for a sustained period after being in the breakaway for a long time for about 46 or 47 kilometers an hour. But what you'll find behind is when the teams of the sprinters start working, start using the slipstreaming effect, especially because there's a lot of riders prepared to come to the front and set the pace, they can bring the average speed of the main field up to 55 kilometers an hour over this last 12 kilometers. They can snap up a minute's advantage on Walter Benetton in the click of your fingers.
Well, we're looking at a Frenchman. He's still on German soil. He'll soon be back in France. Walter Benetton, and you know the French have not had a lot to cheer in the Tour de France since Lance Armstrong started winning it every year. But today they've had a marvellous ride. They've had a lot of riders in the breakaway moves, and now they're trying to win the stage here. The gap is still 35 seconds. It's still not over as we race now into the last 12 kilometres of the day.
Looking here at Walter Benetton, he really is a very experienced rider. He's got his hands in the middle of the handlebars. It's a very precarious thing to do. Don't try that trick at home, because what he's trying to do is make himself adopt a fairly low-profile time trial position, gets out of the saddle. You can almost feel the urgency of the pressure, and what he's thinking is, if I can just get into the outskirts of Strasbourg, get into the streets of the town, there may be a little bit of confusion in the main field behind, and I may just outfox the sprinters. But he knows, I think, in the back of his mind, he's just prolonging the agony, waiting for the main field to chase, because behind Phil, they still haven't really turned on the speed of the sprinters.
Well, I tell you, it's at this stage, Paul, commentators really want to start cheering, really, and bringing him on home, because it's a brilliant move. He's been out in the front since the 3rd kilometre of the day. He is now running in to the last 11 kilometres of the day, and he's still out front. And the crowd, this is a motorway, look where the crowd come from. They're watching the race go by. Looking over the shoulder, the race director's car, they're still very much out of sight. We're looking on the right at the drive being done by the Quick-Step team here, and with a lot of help from Johan van Summeren behind, and in front indeed, the Lotto boys helping out here.
Big faces of concentration on the front end of the main field. They're all waiting. They know that they're about to cross swords, and they're about to put into position some of the fastest men in the world of professional cycling. Walter Benetton is just surviving at the moment at the front end of this bike race, but if he looks back, he can see the whole of this main field. Also moving up there, a few pink jerseys of T-Mobile. on the front. It's still a lot of work being done by Johan van Sommeren, but shortly I'm sure we will have to see the change of colour of the guard on the front end of the peloton go to that light blue and grey jerseys of Quick-Step and of course of Tom Bowman, but I can't see Tom Bowman anywhere near the front end of the main field.
Well, it's 31 seconds on the screen in our earphones from the race. They're saying 25. Who cares? He's still in the lead. He's still driving on here, and there's still nobody over his shoulder. We must have gone under a little bridge there to lose that picture. Maybe not. Oh yes, we did. There we are. He's still driving on. Every little rise in the road now hurts, and he's got to go at 100% of effort. No more shadow boxing. It's win or finish last now for Walter Benetton today.
Well, it doesn't matter for Walter Benetton. He's got to find a little bit of 10% more. There's the world champion now moving into position. Got a couple of teammates around him. Tom Bowman, for me, is currently a little bit too far back. He needs to be up in the top 10 or 15 places. And I think the teammates there have decided to say to him, look, Tom, we're going to go for this sprint. Let's move to the front.
Oh boy, a few deep breaths and a quick drink, but he keeps the pressures on now. We're heading towards 9 kilometres to go. This is the last time bonus sprint of the day. He's done pretty well in that regard today. He has won 10 seconds out of the available 12. If he can just hang on, he'll sweep this one up as well. So that'll keep him high up overall. But of course, once he gets caught by the peloton, a few seconds become minutes as you get spat out the back of that big group.
Yes, he's not too worried about what his position is going to be overall. Here he comes through the sprint point here at 9 kilometres to go. Maximum points for him, 6 seconds in the back of the pocket as well. But he started the day a long way down overall. Look at this, George Hincapie's going for it. What a very clever move by George Hincapie. And look at the Crédit Agricole rider there trying to get himself the bonus. But for George Hincapie, that's 3rd place and 2 seconds. George Hincapie has just snatched the yellow jersey here away from the shoulders of Thor Hushovd. It's going to be a big battle now to see who can perform in the finish at the moment. Hincapie was very upset yesterday at not getting the yellow jersey. He missed out for 73 hundredths of a second, and there it just goes to show at the Tour de France, you have to be alert every kilometre of the way. What a very clever move by George Hincapie there. Nobody, I don't think, was expecting that at all. Well, Walter Benetton has taken maximum points, and he now has around about 200 metres, but look at the way his body is starting to talk to us. His body is saying to us here, Walter is screaming out in agony. His body wants him to stop, but when there's a slight chance you can win a stage of the Tour de France, it carries on. The body can go that little 10% more all of the time. There is the Rhine. He's crossing the border now. Behind him is Germany. When he comes off this bridge, he will be back in France, and there is the main field. There he sits up. The glory of the day for Walter Benetton is all over right now. He's back in the fold. His dream has just been broken. Well, now you have to certainly get yourself back into composition. The sprinters now have got to get themselves organised. But that was a very clever move by George Hincapie.
Hi, I'm Tom Bowman, and you're watching the Tour on ITV.
Clear blue skies, certainly dry ground, and only a light wind to contend with. Look at that long straight line. There's just virtually nothing to say about this final kilometre. But that also means there's nothing to get in the way in what could be an epic sprint finish between the world's fastest men. No surprises with the favourites then, the big Belgian Tom Bowman and of course the diminutive Australian Robbie McEwen. No great surprises either with my wildcard choice. The prologue winner Thor Hushovd demonstrated yesterday, despite being normally 2 to 3 metres behind those guys, he's in the form of his life. And add to that, he said in the press last night that he now thinks he can beat Bowman in a straight line sprint. We may see Thor Hushovd about to launch Sprinter Mark II. His Achilles heel has really been his team. They've always failed to put together a strong lead out to the finish. So he's probably going to have to rely once again on Julian Dean, his right-hand man, to get him through those final kilometres. Well, he'll have the yellow jersey on his back, and I can tell you from experience that sometimes that can make all the difference.
And the peloton now changing shape all of the time here as we get inside 6 kilometres to go now. And don't forget that out there. A lot of these riders are wearing those polar heart rate monitors. Masao Tosata's at the moment, I can tell you, is beating at 175 beats per minute, which is only just about 10 beats off his maximum for the day. So he's under pressure, and he's going to have to lead out his teammates shortly.
That's why he's under pressure. Right now, he's moved to the front. He's somewhere in the gaggle of riders between 15th and 20th. He's thinking about the position, of course, of his man, Tom Bowman, the world champion. There's the yellow jersey. Thor Hushovd enjoyed his day in yellow this afternoon. He probably wants to prolong the experience, because last time he got the yellow jersey a couple of years ago, Phil, he only wore it for a single day. Today, I think he'd like to keep it for just a little bit longer. 5 kilometres to go.
Under the banner at 5, back onto French soil now. The crowds tell you the way the riders have to go towards the finish. We're racing into the avenue of the Black Forest here.
Theoretically, over the last kilometre, there are no real dangerous corners. Most of the corners in the last 3 kilometres are what we call sweepers in the sport of professional cycling. The kind of corners you hardly have to touch your brakes on. The riders will be going round at close to 50 kilometres an hour. Still a little bit dodgy. Milram now taking over control at the front end of the main field. Liquigas getting themselves sorted out as well. There may be Magnus Bagstedt, the big Swede, is going to have a go. Stuart O'Grady is right in the middle there as well. O'Grady, let's not forget, is now 6 seconds off the lead of George Hincapie. He too will be looking for a top 3 finish.
I think this is a Christian Nice of Germany on the front of Milram, because his object now is to keep the pace so high nobody can get off the front of this bunch and nip away to the finishing line, because the sprinters want the pack to stay together and take each other on. 4 kilometres left.
4 kilometres left. You've got to think about the sprinters now. Tom Boonen is right up there. He will be right in the middle. We're thinking about Eric Zabel as well for Team Milram. This is at the back of the race. This looks like Danilo De Luca going backwards.
Well, this is a big surprise. Danilo De Luca doesn't want to give away time here. He's a man for the future of this race. Don't worry about his prologue time, but he's sat up and gone off. Now, that is not good news.
Well, he's had a little bit of an infection over the last couple of days. He has been on antibiotics, and he's going to lose himself probably a couple of minutes before the end of today's stage. Still a bit of confusion at the front. There's a Phonak rider right up there. I wonder if Robbie Hunter's going to have a go.
I think they're all going to... This is going to be one terrific sprint finish. Good luck to the commentator. No, I didn't mean that. Right, we're going into the last 3 kilometres of the race now. It's a bit narrow there, isn't it? There is the 3 kilometres banner now. Remember, it's only the last kilometre where we're dead straight. Rabobank now for Oscar Freire, a 3-time world champion, trying to drag him into the pictures. And Lundqvist there, the champion of Sweden, also the youngest man in the race, sitting third wheel.
Well, Oscar Freire is a very enigmatic rider. You know, sometimes he can win races, other times he's completely injured, but he has been world champion on 3 occasions. A little bit of chaos now. There is Valverde in the white jersey. I cannot see for the moment. Tom Boone and his team don't seem to have got themselves under control here. Everybody all over the road now. The first sprint of the day in the Tour de France. Everybody's nervous. Everybody's ready to try and get victory. It's absolute chaos out there. You dare not touch your brakes. You touch your brakes at this moment now, you'll find yourself losing 150 places in the main field.
Well, it's who can pick the best wheel now, because there is no one team, as we suspected, can control this race. There's no Team Discovery. There's no Silver Bullet team of the years gone by of Fassa Bortolo. So the sprinters are going to look for the strong men and try and pinch them off the other sprinters.
Well, no organisation, still no one team dominating this as we inside now 2 kilometres to go to the finish. They're all over the road. There's the green jersey of Hincapie in around about 10th or 15th place. There's the yellow jersey of Thor Hushovd. He's down into about 10th place. You know, he's got to do something special. Thor Hushovd, I think, today may well come up with the goods and try and get himself a top 3 place. I still could not see Robbie McEwen, but you know what? For Australia, that's not really a problem.
No, that's absolutely normal. The 2 riders on the front right now are leaky gas riders trying to get Magnus Bagstedt, the Swedish rider who lives in Wales, in Great Britain, to the front. As they come off that bottom bend now, our camera's going to have to stay away from the riders. It's fire all the way here. And Bagstedt is in fact about 6 riders down at the moment. He's not onto the wheel of his teammate. Milram are trying to get Zabel. They are the light blue. And Bernardi's team are also getting in the play here now. This is flat out. A little shot here. Thor Hushovd and Zabel's off to the right. 3 men down dead centre. 4 men, because Oscar Freire is there as well. As they come round, that's the last corner. Take it wide. Breathe deeply into the final kilometre.
1 kilometre is an awful long way to go in a sprint like this. Eric Zabel is in a superb position up there in into about third. Oscar Freire a little bit too much to the front for me. In second place, Zabel just pausing a little. He's gone to the front. He doesn't want to be there, but you can see now the yellow jersey moving forward. He has a teammate with him. Tor Hushovd is up there into second. Who is in third place? But it's Robbie McEwen.
It's Robbie McEwen. This man appears like he takes the invisible cloak off in Harry Potter. He suddenly sat there. Third wheel now, McEwen. Zabel is fourth wheel. Tor Hushovd is riding. Remember, no yellow jersey, has won a stage wearing yellow since Mario Cipollini in 1997. Breaking on the far right now. We're trying to get Gettelsteiner. And the world champion in the white jersey goes. He's the man to beat. Zabel tries to take his wheel. And McEwen there boxed a little bit. Tom Bowman looks over his shoulder. He's got McEwen, his worst man, on his wheel now. As he had Jimmy Casper coming on the far right now. And now it's Zabel trying to go with Jimmy Casper here now. And Brunen, I think, is beaten. Tommy Brunen, it may be a French day this. As on the far right of our picture, there's a battle, but it's going to be on the line. A win for Jimmy Casper, I think. And if that's the way the Tour de France is going to go, that is without doubt the finest victory. And I hate to say it, we never mentioned him all day until he hit the line. What a win.
What a win. He was in the right place. He battled it out with the kings of the sport, the kings of the road, the fastest men in the sport of professional cycling. Tom Bowman was completely caught out, no team around him. He was waiting to start his sprint, but for Tom Bowman, he didn't have anyone there to lead him out. But when you saw Jimmy Casper, he took the risk, he saw the moment, he just grabbed it. Eric Zabel wasn't too far away. Let's just have a look at this one more. You can see on the front there, Tom Bowman looking over his shoulder. Yellow jersey's gone down. I don't know when this happened. The yellow jersey has gone down.
Well, we never saw this. There was a twitch. We never saw the crash, and he's going to have stitches in that arm. Well, what a tragedy. Tor Hushovd is a sprinter. He mixes it with the best. He looked to be good. We did not see the crash. I think it may have happened to Paul after the crossing of the line. I'm not too sure exactly where he is, but I think he's after the line here.
Well, it was after the line that Tor Hushovd went down, but it was actually during the sprint that he was injured. If you look at the replay here, he's on the extreme left of shot, close to the barriers. Close enough for someone to hit him in the head with what might be a camera and cut him across the arm with one of the thousands of giveaway green cardboard hands, which embarrassingly for the Tour are handed out by the company that sponsors the sprints. The resulting cut was bad enough to merit a trip to casualty.
Donc ça a saigné abondamment, c'est ce qui était assez impressionnant. Et puis, étant donné que c'était en fin d'étape, après un effort assez violent, il paraissait faire un petit malaise, mais ce qui n'était pas le cas, parce qu'il nous a bien parlé, il était bien conscient, il a bien répondu aux questions. Donc son état ne nous inquiète pas, parce qu'en ayant bien comprimé, ça ne saignait déjà plus. Donc il faut faire bien nettoyer la plaie, certainement faire des points de suture, et puis voir s'il y a un gros hématome en dessous, parce qu'il y a certainement une contusion importante. Donc là, on l'emmène à l'hôpital, on va faire une échographie, des points de suture, et puis après, on pourra faire un pronostic pour demain.
While poor old Tor headed off to get his arm stitched, we sent Chris Boardman off in search of the assault weapon.
Well, this is a rider's nightmare. Coming off in a crash is just all part of the game. But can you imagine coming down this finishing straight at 55 kilometres an hour and getting hit by one of these, a razor-sharp edge on the arm? This isn't the first time either. It happened to Robbie McEwen back in 2004, and they were banned back then. Well, clearly they are back, and perhaps Tor Hushovd would just be happy it didn't hit him in the face.
Well, in the midst of all that chaos, there was a stage winner, and it was the Frenchman Jimmy Casper of Cofidis, just ahead of Robbie McEwen and Eric Zabel. Hushovd came in 9th, but despite his fan trouble, still managed to beat the world champion Tom Bowman, who had a disastrous sprint. All the other big names finished in the main group, including George Hincapie in 23rd place. But 23rd place was irrelevant. He took the first yellow jersey of his career 9 kilometres from the finish when he jumped out of the bunch and took those crucial 2 seconds in the bonus sprint. Afterwards, he spoke to Graham Bell.
George, congratulations, you're in yellow. It was a smart tactical move.
Yeah, definitely a little bit of luck and just a good tactic. We didn't even plan on that. But once we caught the breakaway, I saw that there was a chance, and the sprinters were not going for the bonus, and I just decided to attack. And yesterday I was so disappointed to lose by so little. I've always dreamed of wearing the yellow jersey, and just today it finally happened.
Are we going to see the blue train at the front of the peloton again, defending it?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't know what the tactics will be. I just know that I'm in great shape, and I'm taking the Tour day by day, and so far it's been a pretty damn good Tour de France.
Up to this point anyway, but George doesn't have to look far for a reminder of the fine line between the race lead and a trip to hospital. So, Thor Hushovd in hospital tonight, Chris, and I hate to bring this up, you know what it's like to crash out in the yellow jersey. Terrible feeling. We hope Thor doesn't have to go through it.
No, especially in this situation where everything's going through great form of his life that we've seen already in the yellow jersey. It's just not a pleasant situation. And even if he starts tomorrow, which he may very well do if they've stitched it up nicely, it's still not going to be good for him, and he's going to be thinking about that injury as well. So, really not great news.
A great French win for Jimmy Casper as far as the stage was concerned, but in the overall picture, George Hincapie's move on that sprint, which was surprisingly close to home. They're not usually that close to home.